I've been a traveling sales rep for years. I'm used to the grind. But the motels, they never feel right. A few weeks ago, I checked into a cheap place on the outskirts of a small town. The sign flickered in the dark, and the parking lot was almost empty. I felt a chill in the air as I walked to my room. The inside looked worn, like it had seen too many stories. I shrugged it off and flipped on the TV. As I settled in, the highway noise faded into the background. That's when I heard something. It started as soft thumps against the wall. I thought maybe the neighbors were just moving around. But then it got louder. They sounded more like footsteps. My spine tingled, but I told myself it was nothing. I was just tired. A while later, I woke up to silence. The clock blinked midnight. I tried to dismiss the memory of the thumps, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening for any noise. And then I heard it again. Soft, steady thumps. They were coming from the wall next to my bed. I sat up, staring at the door. There was nothing there. Morning came, and I felt uneasy. I didn't want to stay there another night, but I had meetings to attend. I checked my bed before I left, and found a small note tucked under my pillow. It was blank, but it felt strange to touch. My gut twisted. I should have left then, but I didn't. The next motel was just as run down. I locked the door behind me. I took a shower, trying to shake off the feeling from the last place. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw something move. My reflection looked fine, but there was a shadow behind me. When I turned, nothing was there. I felt cold. I rubbed my eyes, convincing myself it was just the steam. That night, I heard the footsteps again. They were right outside my door. I tried to ignore it, but it got louder. I crept out of bed, my heart pounding. I walked to the door to check, and it was slightly ajar, even though I had locked it. I stood frozen. Then I pushed it open, and the hallway was empty. Every night since then, I felt the feeling creeping up my spine like a cold hand. Was I imagining it? I didn't know. It could be the motels getting to me. But sometimes, I was sure I was being watched. Then one night, while packing my bags, I glanced back. There was something standing in the corner of the room. I blinked, and it was gone. I couldn't shake the idea that whatever haunted those motels hadn't left me. All I wanted was to go home. But what if I never escaped this feeling of being watched? I woke up the next morning, feeling even more restless than before. The sun peeked through the curtains, but it did little to ease the weight pressing on my chest. I had a full day of meetings ahead, but the thought of spending another night in that motel drained me. I needed a distraction. Once I finished my business for the day, I decided to explore the town instead of heading back to the room. I walked around, hoping to find a coffee shop or some local sights. The town itself had a strange vibe and air of forgotten stories that lingered in the streets. I caught snippets of conversation as people hurried past, but no one seemed to notice me. As I wandered, I stumbled upon an old bookstore. The sign flickered too, similar to my Motels. Curiosity got the better of me, so I stepped inside. The air was musty, filled with the scent of paper and ink. I scanned the shelves, hoping to lose myself in a book that offered an escape. That's when I found it. A small leather-bound journal, stained and aged. It caught my eye, so I pulled it from the shelf. Flipping through the pages, I discovered sketches and notes detailing strange occurrences, shadowy figures, strange noises, and other unsettling experiences that mirrored my own. I felt a chill ripple down my spine. I wasn't the only one. I bought the journal, my heart racing as I tucked it under my arm. If those stories had happened to someone else, then maybe I could uncover some explanation for my own odd experiences. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a breadcrumb, leading me somewhere. But where? That night, I returned to my motel room, the journal clutched tightly in my hand. I flipped through it again, absorbed in the tales. Some were alarming, while others were eerily similar to what I encountered. But it was the last entry that caught my breath. It described an encounter with a spirit that only appeared when someone felt trapped. Suddenly, I felt the air shift in the room. The shadows seemed to elongate, creeping closer to me. I glanced at the door, half expecting it to creak open as it had done before. But this time, I felt an intense pressure, as if the walls themselves were leaning in. I flipped the journal shut, my heart racing. Then every light flickered, dimming to near darkness. I held my breath, the room now full of silence. I glanced around, half expecting to see something watching me again. Just as I got my bearings, a loud bang echoed from the bathroom. It felt deliberate, as if someone wanted me to notice. I crept toward the bathroom doorway, my heart pounding. I had to see what was making that noise. I pushed the door open, and my stomach dropped. The mirror was shattered. Glass glittered across the floor, but what caught my eye was not just the wreckage. A message was etched in the mirrored surface. Written in jagged letters it read, "You shouldn't have stayed." Breath catching in my throat, I tore my gaze away from the broken shards. I needed to leave, but after the night I had, I wouldn't be able to escape easily. Panic surged. This had gone too far. Whoever or whatever was haunting my nights was getting closer. And I was trapped, caught in a web I could hardly comprehend. As I backed away, I realized I wasn't the first to unwittingly cross paths with this presence. I froze, feeling the air grow colder. I was not alone. I bolted back from the bathroom, heart in my throat, panic coursing through me. The oppressive silence felt deafening, amplifying every creak and groan of the old motel. The air around me thickened as shadows danced menacingly on the walls. I wanted to scream but didn't want to draw attention to myself. Whatever was in the room with me seemed to thrive on fear. The journal was still clutched in my hand, but I didn't want to look at it now. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in that entry might be happening to me right now. I had to do something. I needed answers. Thinking quickly, I rushed to my suitcase. I fumbled to find my laptop, almost knocking over the chair. I opened it, and hoped to find something in the journal that could help. All my instincts screamed at me to get out, but the pull of the journal was stronger. I needed to know more. I clicked open a search engine and typed in phrases from the journal: shadowy figures, haunting, she stayed too long. Results flooded my screen, but there was one link that caught my eye. The headline read, "Haunted Motels, Stories from Travelers." I clicked it, feeling a mix of dread and curiosity. As the page loaded, my eyes flicked to the side of the screen. A small chat box popped up, marked as live support. I hesitated but decided I had nothing to lose. I typed out a quick message, outlining my strange experiences. I pressed enter, and my heart raced as I waited for a response. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, pulling my attention away from the screen. I looked over to the window, but it was too dark to see anything outside. My fingers drummed nervously on the table in time with my heartbeat as I kept glancing back at the bathroom, expecting something to emerge. The chat box blinked, and I was jolted from my thoughts. A reply appeared, "You need to leave that place. It's hungry." My blood ran cold. I typed, "What do you mean?" On the other end, the response came quickly, "Places like that feed off your fear. Get out before it's too late." My instincts screamed at me to pack and leave, but an inexplicable pull kept me in my seat. Before I could reply, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into almost total darkness. My screen flickered as well, the brightness grappling against the shadows. In the chaos, the bathroom door creaked wider, the sound slicing through the silence like a knife. I was frozen, unable to move. That door had been closed just moments earlier, and the cold air seeped from within, wrapping around me like a viscous fog. Then, something caught my eye, a shape materializing in the darker corner of the room. It was faint at first, like smoke curling upward, but it quickly solidified into something more definite, something that felt wrong. Before I could react, the chat box chimed again. "You need to," but the message was cut off as the screen went black, a sudden burst of static filling the air. That's when I saw it. The figure loomed closer, and in its gaze, I could feel the weight of uncountable days spent in quiet anguish. I had one thought as I stood there, frozen in fear: this wasn't just about me anymore. I needed to uncover the truth before it consumed me entirely. The figure loomed closer, its shape clear but its details shrouded in nightmare. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. All I could do was stare, my body paralyzed with terror. It felt as though the temperature in the room dropped with its approach. The air chilled and pricked at my skin, forcing me to take a step back, but the icy dread kept me rooted in place. Out of desperation, I glanced back at my laptop. The chat box was dark, but I had an idea. I'd seen something about a history of disappearances related to the motel. Maybe that was my way out of this. One quick movement, and I slammed my laptop closed before sinking onto the edge of the bed. I couldn't take my eyes off the figure, and it was slowly stretching across the room like it was filling the space with its presence. I closed my eyes hard, desperate for some clarity, but all I got was the echo of whispers. It felt as if they were swirling around me, teasing my sanity. I finally forced myself to look at the journal again. I opened it, trembling, and flipped through the pages until I found the entry that had mentioned the shadows. It described how a previous guest had stayed too long, becoming a part of the haunting itself. I barely got through the sentence before the lights flickered again, and the whispers intensified to a cacophony. "What do you want?" I croaked, my voice feeble. The figure seemed to pause, and in that moment of stillness, I took a shaky breath, gathering my courage. A single word echoed back at me, a name. Catherine. Suddenly, I recalled a detail from the journal. Catherine was a name that appeared multiple times. Was that who had been trapped here? Had she become one of the shadows? I felt a surge of urgency. If I could uncover her story, I might find a way to break free from this nightmare. With the figure still coldly watching me, I picked up my laptop again, fighting the rising panic. I searched for Catherine Motel disappearances. My heart pounded as I scanned the growing list of articles. The room felt heavy with oppressive silence as I zeroed in on a result that caught my eye. Catherine Reynolds, last seen at the Pines Motel. I clicked it and braced for impact. The article described how Catherine had disappeared without a trace after checking in for a weekend getaway. No one had seen her since, and her belongings were left untouched. A chill rolled through me as I read how her friends had reported strange occurrences, voices in the night calling her name just like the whispers I had heard. The screen flickered again, but this time, I didn't look away. I had to read more. I flipped pages, desperately trying to link what happened to Catherine with what I was experiencing. As I read further, I came across an online forum where travelers shared their own stories. Comments came pouring in, each one echoing eerily similar experiences: fear, shadowy figures, a sense of being watched. "Are you still there?" The chat box blinked back to life. "You don't have much time." I typed furiously, "What happened to Catherine?" "Find her," the message replied. "Or join her." In that moment, the figure lunged, and a rush of terror surged through me. I felt the cold here in the room, but it wasn't just the air. It was a presence, a promise of something dark that wanted me to share in its eternal torment. As I struggled to understand my next move, the laptop screen glitched, and then, everything went pitch black. I could feel it closing in around me. "Help!" I shouted into the darkness. But the only reply was a low, hollow laugh that echoed through the room. The darkness pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face, but I felt the outline of the room, heavy and wrong. The echo of that laugh lingered, growing fainter until it was only a memory in my mind. I didn't know if moments or minutes passed before I finally gathered enough courage to move. Tentatively, I stretched my fingers out, trying to locate my laptop. The moment my hand brushed against the cool metal, light burst back into the room, flickering wildly. The figure was still there, a silhouette shrouded in shadow, but it had retreated slightly, almost as if it was watching me instead of advancing. I gasped at the sight of the screen. It flickered with words. "Catherine is waiting." Panic crashed over me as I read the message. I couldn't afford to hesitate. I had to figure this out, and fast. I typed hurriedly, "What do you mean?" There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then the message appeared, the childhood story. Find her truth. Catherine's truth? I mumbled to myself, anxiety welling up inside. I pulled up the forum comments again, desperate for information. I froze on a post dated years ago. It described an old folktale associated with the motel, a local legend about a girl named Catherine who had been abandoned by her family. She was said to roam the haunted halls, forever seeking closure. What closure? I thought aloud. Suddenly it hit me. I recalled Catherine's name mentioned in the entries of the journal. It was all intertwined, the echoes of her past, the disappearances. But where to start? The laptop screen blinked and glitched again. A new message appeared from the chat. The mirror. Look in the mirror. My heart raced. I spun around to face the dusty vanity. The mirror stood like a portal to another world, and dread tinged my thoughts. I couldn't turn away from the urgency that gripped me. I took a step closer, the figure now barely visible, seeming to blur at the edges. I glanced back at the screen, my fingers hovering uncertainly over the keyboard. I understood. I needed to confront whatever truth was hidden here. With a deep breath, I approached the mirror. The reflections were distorted, warped. I leaned in, heart pounding. What was I supposed to see? That S when I noticed a faint glow behind me, illuminating the edges of the shadowy figure. My breath caught in my throat as the glow intensified. Slowly, the shadow's outline morphed into that of a young girl, Catherine. She reached out with trembling hands, and the whispers swelled around us, urging me to listen. Help me, she mouthed, but no sound came out. My pulse raced. I couldn't turn back now. Before I could react, the glow flickered and the reflection changed. I stood frozen as a new scene unfolded, a nightmarish image of Catherine in tears, trapped in the motel room I was in. Her face twisted with sorrow, a plea etched into her expression. Without thinking, I shouted, "What do you want from me?" The air grew still, the whispers quieted. The shadow trembled, and she slowly melted back into darkness, leaving me alone with the essence of her pain. Then everything went dark again, deeper than before. I was enveloped in an almost suffocating silence, and dread seeped into my bones. "Please," I whispered, feeling helpless. Then something shifted behind me. The presence returned, more potent and colder than before. I felt breath against my neck, and I froze again. Someone or something had come back for me. I shut my eyes tight, waiting for the inevitable. The weight of the presence pressed down like a lead blanket. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. I felt trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. With a sudden coldness, a whisper cut through the stillness. "Find me," it echoed, and I knew it was Catherine's voice. I forced my eyes open, and panic surged as the glow from the laptop flickered to life again. "Catherine is not free. You must choose." The words hung heavy in the air, stoking my unease. "Choose what?" Suddenly, the light shifted, casting shadows across the room. The outline of the girl flickered, sharp and bright. She seemed closer than before. "Help me," she repeated, but her voice was a haunting echo, blending into the darkness. I stepped back but collided with something solid. The shadow I feared had become tangible. I spun around to face it, my breath catching. I could barely discern its features, dark and formless, a silhouette that radiated frustration. "Catherine!" I shouted, feelings of anger and fear mixing. I thrust my hand towards the mirror. "What do you want?" The figure recoiled, and I saw Catherine's image jerk violently away from the darkness. She was fading. Panic surged again at the thought of losing her, losing whatever help she could give me. "Please!" I cried, desperation flooding my voice. "Tell me how to help you." A silence fell, but then a memory surfaced, a detail from the old folktales I had read earlier. They spoke of a hidden room, a secret where Catherine's truth was hidden. I turned back to the mirror as clarity hit me. "The hidden room," I murmured. The air shifted. The presence seemed to swell with rage, and the whispers evolved into a deafening shriek. "No!" it cried, the sound reverberating through the space like crackling thunder. I staggered back, my heart in my throat. The laptop screen illuminated again, flashing wildly a frantic signal. Find the key, it blinked, words jarring against my thoughts. Key? I echoed, but there was no time to waste. I dashed to the darkened corners of the room, searching frantically. My mind raced through every nook and cranny. Was it under the bed? Behind the nightstand? When I spotted it, a glint of metal shining through a gap in the floorboards. I knelt down, prying at the wood, my fingers struggling with the splintered edges. When I finally pulled it free, I held up a small rusted key. My insides twisted with anticipation and dread. Behind me, the shadow loomed larger, its shape shifting in response to the key. With a deep breath, I made my decision, feeling the weight of time slipping away. Where is the hidden room? I shouted into the encroaching darkness. But it was too late. The shadows enveloped me, crashing together like thunder. I felt the key slip from my fingers as an overwhelming force dragged me backward, farther into the depths of the motel's haunted past. Then there was silence, and I understood I was about to find out the truth, whether I was ready or not. I opened my eyes, not sure where I was. The air felt different, crisp and almost electric. I was no longer in my room. Instead, I found myself in a long, dimly lit hallway lined with faded wallpaper, peeling along the edges. A flickering bulb buzzed above me, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. My heart raced. Had I been taken somewhere? I blinked as I pushed myself off the cold floor. My fingers brushed against something hard and cold. I reached down to find the rusted key still clutched in my hand. The familiar weight comforted me, but fear twisted in my stomach. I stood, trying to recall how I'd ended up here. Then I heard it, the faintest whisper. This way. The voice was softer now, almost inviting. I glanced down the hallway, and at the far end, I saw a door slightly ajar, a sliver of light pulsing from within. Without thinking, I started toward it, my footsteps echoing against the wooden floor. Each step felt like stepping deeper into the unknown. I reached the door, the light warming my face, almost as if it was urging me forward. I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. Inside, the space was surreal. It looked like a living room, but not one I recognized. Dusty furniture sat scattered, an old couch, a coffee table covered in yellowed papers, and pictures on the walls, though the faces were blurred and indistinct. In the corner, a tall, dark cabinet stood, its doors partially closed. I stepped in, scanning the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I thought about Catherine. Was this the hidden room I had wondered about? Was it where she was trapped? The whisper returned, louder now. Help me! It was Catherine's voice again. It hung in the air, wrapping around me like fog. Before I could think, I moved toward the cabinet. My hands trembled as I grasped the handle and yanked it open. Inside I found an array of forgotten items, a dusty mirror, a few old books, and a collection of keys, each one different. My pulse quickened as I rummaged through them. One of these has to be it, I murmured to myself, feeling the urgency course through me. But then I froze. The air grew cold, and the light dimmed. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a shadow shift just outside the door. Panic shot through me. I turned, searching for a way out. Don't ignore me! A chilling voice seeped into the room, sending shivers down my spine. I took a step back, feeling trapped. I needed to make a choice, but I didn't even understand what was at stake. Was I supposed to find the right key, or was there something else I needed to do? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, rattling the frame. I could hear the faint whisper intensifying, each word soaked in desperation. You must choose, help me before they come. In that moment, I realized the weight of my decision. I had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But just as the first key slipped through my fingers, I was left with only the chilling question, what awaited me if I failed? As I turned back to the cabinet, footsteps began to echo outside the door. I could feel the tension in the air, and it was clear I wasn't alone anymore. I pressed my back against the cabinet, heart racing. The footsteps outside were slow, deliberate, almost mocking. I couldn't make out any voices, just heavy breathing and the creaking of wood. My thoughts darted around like panicked fireflies. Who was out there? Were they looking for me? I quickly scanned the cabinet again, hoping for a clue or something I had missed. The keys clinked as I fumbled through them. Each one felt heavier than the last, an echo of the weight of my choices. I needed to get out of here. Help me, Catherine's voice floated back to me, a soft plea that gripped my heart. You have to hurry. I wished I could make sense of her words. Was I supposed to find a specific key? Or was it the cabinet itself that held the answer? As I crouched down, I noticed an old book lying partially hidden under a layer of dust. I pulled it out, feeling the rough texture of worn leather. The title had faded, but I could make out a few words: The Secrets of the Lost. My curiosity ignited, and I opened the book to find pages filled with sketches and notes, stories about lost souls and forgotten places. Each tale felt intertwined with my own, but one drawing stood out, a depiction of a door with a rusted lock that matched the key in my hand. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. I held my breath, straining to hear anything over the pounding in my ears. Maybe this book had more answers than I realized. I flipped through the pages until I found an old, yellowed note tucked inside. To unlock what is hidden, one must choose the right key and confront the dark. My heart sank. Confront the dark? What did that mean? Before I could think it through, the door rattled violently, making me jump. Someone or something was trying to get in. With a surge of adrenaline, I bolted towards the rear of the cabinet, pushing aside useless objects in search of an escape route. The whispers surged again, growing louder, as if they were feeding off my panic. Choose wisely, choose. My muscles tensed, and I glanced back at the door just as it flew open. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. I felt my breath hitch. Their features were shadowed, but there was a familiarity that sent chills down my spine. Why are you hiding? The voice was gravelly, filled with malice. The air thickened with dread. I had to act. In a frantic moment, I grabbed the rusted key and held it tightly, hoping its weight would anchor me in the chaos. The whisper changed, now urgent, pleading, "You must choose, now." I stepped forward, adrenaline flooding my veins. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. "What do I have to do?" The figure stepped closer, and just then, the floorboards groaned as if complaining under the weight of the tension. I realized I had no time left. Heart racing, I chose a key from the cabinet and rushed forward, ready to face whatever lay beyond. But just as I reached the threshold, the floor beneath me cracked loudly, and the shadows twisted ominously, wrapping around my ankles like chains. The choice had been made, but would it lead me to Catherine or into greater despair? In that instant of uncertainty, something whispered from the depths of the room. "It's not over yet." The moment I stepped forward, the shadows released their grip, and I stumbled into the illuminated hallway beyond the cabinet. The chill of the air stung my skin. I quickly turned to see the doorway behind me vanish as if it had never existed. Panic rose in my throat. I was alone, but not truly free. I caught my breath and looked around the strange hallway. Dim light flickered from antiquated sconces, barely illuminating the faded wallpaper. The air smelled musty, like something long forgotten. The sound of my heartbeat echoed in the silence. "Catherine?" I called out, unsure if the name would even reach her. My voice felt small in this endless corridor. "Where are you?" No response. Just the rustle of the dying light, and the soft click of something shifting in the distance. I had a gut feeling I needed to keep moving. With one hand clutching the key, I started down the hallway, each step heavy with uncertainty. As I walked, memories flooded back, a collage of smiles, laughter, and easy afternoons with Catherine, moments of joy now haunting me. But the imagery was interrupted when I noticed a door on my left. The door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness peeking from the edges. I approached it cautiously, heart pounding. The moment I reached for the doorknob, a chill shot through the air. "A warning?" I hesitated, recalling the note in the book, the words about confrontation and darkness swirling in my mind. Still, I couldn't ignore the pull I felt toward whatever lay beyond that door. I twisted the doorknob. It creaked open. Inside, a small room awaited bare, except for a dusty mirror hanging crookedly against the wall. I stepped closer, my breath fogging the glass as I studied my reflection, but something felt off. It was as if the reflection was a step behind, waiting for me to catch up. That's when I saw it. A shadow flitted quickly behind me in the reflection, something dark and elongated moving through the doorway. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. My pulse quickened. I turned back to the mirror. My reflection looked startled, eyes wide with a fear I didn't even fully comprehend. And maybe I'm imagining things, I whispered, convincing myself. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out. The sudden darkness swallowed me whole. I fumbled, trying to find my bearings, dread creeping back into my mind. I could hear distant whispers growing louder, as I felt the familiar pressures of unease weighing me down. Choose wisely echoed in the void. I gripped the key tighter, realizing that it was not just an exit I sought. It was an answer, or perhaps, a confrontation. I needed to decide what came next. Before I could summon the courage to move, the whispers grew frantic, almost insistent. Find her. You need to find her. With the echoes of Catherine's voice guiding me, I stepped back towards the shadows that awaited me once more, tension thick around me. I had to keep going. I had to find Catherine. But what if the darkness held more than just her? The shadows began to swirl, and I felt a presence behind me, one that felt all too familiar. I turned slowly, anxiety clawing at my chest. And that's when I saw it, a face, twisted with longing and malice, emerging from the dark. Everything within me screamed to run, but I was rooted to the spot, caught in the web of obscurity. I needed to know what came next. The face loomed closer, every feature sharpened by the flickering light. I could feel my heart pound against my ribcage, raw panic coursing through me as shadows danced in the corners of my vision. Catherine? I croaked, hoping against hope that it would bring her to me. The apparition paused, its gaze piercing through me, cold as death. You shouldn't be here, it hissed, the voice an amalgamation of sorrow and rage. Like an echo from beyond, it sent chills racing down my spine. You must choose. But what could I choose? Would it even matter? The journal had hinted at choices, and the whispers demanded clarity, but all I felt was confusion. My grip tightened around the rusted key, as if it could ground me. Somewhere in the depths of my mind, I wondered if my next step would be my last. Find her, the voice softened, almost pleading. Help me break the chains. I staggered back, racing thoughts colliding in an overwhelming cacophony. What chains? The shadows seemed to recoil slightly, as if my fear fed their energy. Where is she? I shouted into the dark. Where's Catherine? The figure shifted in the shadows, its edges darkening. You have to unlock her truth, it rasped. Before it's too late. I swallowed hard. An image of the hidden room swam in my mind, the secrets wrapped up in the dust-covered mirror. If that was her truth, perhaps by confronting it, I could find her. Taking a shaky breath, I edged toward the mirror that hung unevenly on the wall, its surface reflecting echoes of the gloom surrounding me. Was this the way to free Catherine? The whispers intensified, now a chorus, urging me to act. The figure drifted behind me, whispering half-coherent tales of despair. I turned my gaze firmly towards the mirror, willing my reflection to reveal a sliver of truth. Show me, I demanded, voice shaky but filled with newfound determination. Show me what you've hidden. For a moment, nothing happened. The stillness filled the air with an unsettling weight. But then, the glass began to ripple like the surface of a disturbed pond. The whispers lowered to a hush, as the mirror became a portal, swirling mist coalescing to reveal a scene unfolding from within. I squinted, leaning closer, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. A young girl, Catherine, standing in a dimly lit room that resembled my own, her silhouette surrounded by shadow. No sound escaped her lips, but terror was plain on her face as she pointed towards something I couldn't see. I reached out instinctively, heart racing as I felt pull of the past. What do I need to do? I whispered. Catherine, what do you want from me? The shadows flickered, thickening. My heart pounded as I focused again on the girl in the reflection, her eyes wide with fear, darting toward the floor as if something had emerged. I barely caught a glimpse before the mirror darkened anew, and then her anguished expression faded into darkness. I felt the figure glide closer, its breath chilly against my neck. You have to choose. Will you confront the dark, or remain lost like her forever? I staggered back, spine pressed against the cold walls. With resolve swelling, I gripped the key tightly once more. Maybe the choice I needed was not just finding a hidden truth, but finding the courage to face it, whatever it might be. I choose to help Catherine. I shouted, the conviction in my voice surprising even me. I choose to free her, whatever it takes. The shadows erupted around me, enveloping me. I gasped as I felt an explodable force hurl me back toward the mirror. The glass rippled violently, sucking me into its depths. My body screamed against the pressure of the chaos that enveloped me. As I was drawn inside, the world around me distorted into flashes of light and dark faces, memories, fears all coalescing and pulling apart. Images of Catherine's sorrow, her abandonment echoed through the darkness like an unending cycle. And then, it all snapped back into focus. I stood in a room where time felt suspended, a flickering candle casting soft light around me. My heart raced as I spun to find Catherine standing in front of me, her eyes touched with a reflection of indefinable hope. "Help me," she whispered, as shadows twined around her feet, struggling to restrain her. I moved closer, reaching out. "What do you need me to do?" Her gaze shifted, pointing to an ornate box resting on a wooden table in the corner, adorned with symbols that twisted and writhed like hungry serpents. "Unlock the truth," Catherine urged, despair again threading her words. "Before they bind me to this place." I crossed the room, heartbeat echoing in my ears. My finger grazed over the box. It felt warm, excited, as I sensed the key in my palm. But I hesitated as the shadowy tendrils began to swirl around the box, dark fingers curling around, holding it close. "Catherine, what's inside?" I called back, fighting the fear growing in my chest. Memories. Pain. But also her eyes looked toward the box with a mix of longing and dread. "It's my only chance to be free." Breathless, I turned the key in the lock, bracing myself for the unknown. The moment it clicked open, an ominous whisper filled the air, chilling me to my core. I felt the shadows shudder, dropping away from Catherine for just an instant. Light burst from the box, illuminating the darkened room, cascading warmth over everything. Boundless visions cascaded in rapid succession, a life once lived, forgotten memories of joy and laughter, of a girl who thrived before sorrow made her a shadow. But there was also a deeper darkness, memories of separation, of abandonment that had anchored her to this place. As the light engulfed me, an explosion of energy surged through my body while I struggled to maintain my grip on the key. Catherine stood at the threshold of hope and despair, and I felt her pain but also her flickering light. "Remember me! Choose to set me free!" she cried, desperation painting her voice. In that overwhelming moment, the choice struck me, piercing through confusion. The key had to be more than an object. It symbolized a passage between despair and hope. It meant confronting her story, embracing both the light and dark. "Catherine, I won't let you be forgotten!" I screamed into the light, wielding the key like a torch. The air shimmered, thick with urgency and promise. Shadows recoiled, swirling around desperately as if pulled by an unseen force, fading into the corners of the room. The warmth of freed memories encased Catherine, illuminating the pain she endured. "I'll break your chains!" I shouted, invoking every ounce of belief I had left. The glow enveloped her entirely, and in an instant, the shadows were stripped away, leaving only her shining laughter and the light of an untold story. I was flung back violently, and the space around me shifted once more. As I landed on the worn motel floor, reality had transformed, the shadows receded, and I found myself surrounded by morning's warm light filtering through the curtains. Heart racing, I blinked into the brightness. The room looked exactly as it had when I first checked in, the worn furniture, the peeling walls. But there was an eerie stillness in the air, as if something had shifted inside. I stared at the mirror, no longer just a reflection but the threshold of truth. I felt the weight of my experience, the shadows now behind me, but echoes remained, whispering tales untold. I remained uncertain of what truly transpired, of the line between dark and light, of the supernatural or the psychological. But in the silence, I understood something vital. I had chosen to confront the unknown. Whatever lingered wouldn't define me, nor would it hold Catherine forever. And as I stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the weight on my chest lightened even as I could still hear the whispers lingering in the breeze. The motel behind me was just a building, yet I couldn't shake the uncertainty that something else remained, pieces of stories untold and truths unresolved. Sometimes scarred yet determined, I carried within me the echo of my dark nights, a bridge between light and shadow, always lingering, always urging me to remember.